Welcome to the Nonfiction Writers, podcasting in a great way. Once again, finally together. I'm Ryan Aber, joined by Jason Kersey, who I haven't seen in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it was a nice vacation from you, you know.
Everybody needs a break from me every once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially right now, Barry Trammell, John Shin, and Garen Ebig, and Justin Hite to some extent as well.
I think all of you guys probably need a break from each other. After being in the car that much.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I love all of those guys, but I was a little tired of sharing virtually every meal with them and seeing them, for several hours every day and spending so much time in the car and all that stuff.
Probably wish you were, at some point, you probably wish you were sharing those meals with your wife and your daughter and, as much as you love those guys, you probably miss the family a little bit. I can only imagine.
And I know Garen was feeling the same way. I know Barry was feeling the same way. And, I'm sure Justin was as well. And John Shin probably just wanted to be back home, able to kick up his feet and relax a little bit.
All of you guys, man, yeah.
It's been a wild ride, but we're here to work. We're here to talk. And the topic of the day is going to be OU football, something that I haven't sort of been following from afar ever since the initial protest. But OU football back in practice. Practice last week. You got to talk to them a couple times. They're back on the field again today, Monday when we're talking. Get to talk to offense today, defense on Wednesday. Does it seem like everything's finally settling down around this program right now?
Yeah, I think it is. There's still little things like some of the team leaders, when they come into the interview room, apparently, according to what Ty Darlington said, are going to make some sort of statement about racism or something or other. Every time they talk to us, they're going to open with a statement like that. So I guess we'll have that. But really, other than that, and they're coming in black jerseys. But other than that, it's not all that different than it was before. I think that's a good thing, but I also understand why those guys want this issue to still be out there, and they still want to, continue. They just want to make sure that the public is still thinking about it. While at the same time, it's like I said, it's definitely good to sort of be back into football mode a little bit.
Yeah, and no doubt about that. It seems like everything's sort of settling down, not just around the football program, but around the campus as well. There were a lot of questions to the basketball players when we were in Kansas City for the Big 12 tournament. A question or two during the Columbus availabilities during the first round of the NCAA tournament. I don't think I heard about it talked about once during the time in Syracuse. So,
which is a little surprising because you would think that some of the national writers that were there might have wanted to bring it up. And maybe they did privately or they talked to him off the side or something. But
the great thing, and sort of getting away from football for a minute, but the great thing about OU's situation in Syracuse was the depending on what seed you are is how you get to pick your locker rooms. So OU had a locker room that was I believe if it wasn't a football locker room, it was a very big locker room for another sport. Now Carrier Dome holds Syracuse's football, both basketball, and their lacrosse team. So there's plenty of locker rooms in there, but OU's was pretty massive. Michigan State's, on the other hand, was about less than a quarter the size of OU's, and of course they had a whole lot more media. So there's a good chance it got brought up at some point during your time in that locker room. But I didn't hear it from any of the national guys. A lot of them wanted to talk to Buddy Hield about his boy Tum Tum Nairn, one of the greatest names ever.
Yeah,
his given name is Lou Rawls, and his nickname is Tum Tum. So that was fantastic. But
wow.
Anyway, so back to football a little bit. Yeah, it seems like things have settled down on that degree. Now today, another big item of news: Keith Ford. I think our buddy Garen Ebig. I don't know what he was doing looking at the OU football roster after being gone for so long, but I think he noticed that Keith Ford wasn't on the roster, and asked an OU spokesman, and we find out that he's not only indefinitely suspended for violation of team rules, but academics as well.
Yeah, I'm really surprised by that. I had always sort of thought that maybe Keith Ford would be a guy who might think about transferring just because, after Perine's season last year, Alex Ross sort of has a niche. He's sort of a change of pace guy, also has the kick returning to fall back on. You're adding Joe Mixon back in, Rodney Anderson, everybody's raving about him. And so I always sort of thought that he might just leave on his own. I never would have imagined him being suspended just because, the times we've gotten to talk to him, he seems like a really, really good kid. And not to say that he isn't just because he got suspended for something. You never know what that is. And regardless of what it is, that doesn't take away from necessarily from who he is. But to hear that it's academics is a little bit surprising to me because he's always seemed so sharp and put together.
Yeah,
so,
and his mom is an
teacher.
educator as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so it was a little bit surprising. Not surprising that he's not on the roster anymore, really, but surprising the reason why.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And it'll be interesting to see. Going into this camp, we talked. One of the big storylines was the surplus of running backs, and this is something that I'm writing about for Tuesday's Oklahoman. But we've seen that surplus dwindle really quickly.
Yeah.
Keith Ford, a guy who had proven himself. I know he had ball security issues, but he's not on the roster anymore. Rodney Anderson, a guy that they were extremely high on, an early enrollee, has an MCL injury, and he's out for at least the rest of spring. So now you're working with Samaje Perine, a guy who had a pretty bad injury at the end of last year. I know he came back in the Russell Athletic Bowl, but and then you've got Joe Mixon, who hasn't proven himself on the field yet at this level, and Alex Ross, who's at times had trouble finding space. He's a guy who sort of needs certain situations in order to excel. So the bumper crop of running backs that it seemed is significantly dwindled.
Yeah, I mean, you all of a sudden you go from having a whole bunch of guys you feel good about to only a few, but at the same time, I still think they're in good shape. It is only the spring, and obviously Rodney Anderson I think is going to be fine. Sounds like he's going to be back by the fall. They just didn't want to take any chances. You feel kind of bad for him because he came here to get a leg up and to start getting going. Although I guess you can see he's still going to class and all that stuff, so it was probably still good for him to get up here, but all things I've heard about him are really good. Sort of the other day at the media availability, one of the things I thought was interesting was a lot of the things that people were saying about Rodney Anderson are the same things people were saying about Samaje Perine last summer. So it was kind of a now when I start to hear those things about a freshman, certain little key words like he's already strong enough, he's grasping it really well, those sorts of things, grasping the system really well, those sorts of things are going to sort of throw a flag up for me as maybe something to pay attention to. But so I still think he'll be fine though, particularly if he can start working out in the summer and all of those things. But Keith Ford, who knows, maybe this is the opportunity for him, in a weird use of that word opportunity, I suppose, but to go somewhere else if that's what he ultimately wants to do, because he would have a lot of options, and and he's got a redshirt year to use, so it's not all bad for him if he decides to leave, and again I don't know what he did or whatever. I don't think that should necessarily make people think less of him or anything. Sometimes people don't take class seriously enough in college. There were times when I didn't take class seriously enough in college, so I completely.
I think a lot of people can say that.
Yeah,
and I'm certainly.
And I was never as busy as those football players are.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So it'll be interesting to see, what happens at that spot because of the offensive changes, and there'd been talk, how's Lincoln Riley going to be able to work with these guys? You've got an offensive line that's in a rebuilding process, only bringing back 2 of their 5 starters, so they felt really good about the crop of running backs that they had. And now, yes, you still feel good about what you have right now, but if somebody else gets injured, if something else happens, then all of a sudden you're not feeling quite as good about it.
Yeah. I was thinking about Keith Ford earlier today, and that, it's sort of, if he hadn't had that injury against Tennessee, how different last season might have played out. I still think Perine could have gone off and had the games that he had, but the very next game after the Tennessee game was West Virginia, and that's when Perine had his first monster game. And if Ford had been able to play, would he have had more carries, or would he have had a similar amount? Would he have taken any of those carries away? Would Perine have been able to break out the way he did?
I don't think there's any doubt he would have taken at least a chunk of those carries away.
Yeah, so it's too bad that and injuries are never good, but sometimes they can really come at a bad time for a guy, and that injury gave Perine his opportunity, but it also may have stripped Ford of any chance of ever really, of ever getting back to the point I think he was reaching. Because you remember, going after that Tennessee game, he was the leading rusher on the team and looked like he was going to have a nice year.
Yeah, he hadn't had
a fumble.
Any of the fumble ball security issues that he had in the past was looking like he could be the guy for this team. And that's who I think both of us thought going into last year would probably be the guy for that season.
I definitely did. I remember saying that many times, that I thought Keith Ford was going to be the main guy. And then out trots the first team offense for the first game, and it's Alex Ross, and I was like, oh my God, I must look like such an idiot. And then Perine was the leading rusher in that first game, and we all know what happened after that.
Yeah, so it's hard to put a read on things, but it'll be interesting here coming up April 12th, the OU spring game. Be fun to watch the running backs in that game, to see how well. I say running backs. I mean, we might see a lot of Daniel Brooks in that game since Joe Mixon isn't playing already.
Right. Yeah. That's the guy that everybody sort of forgets about. And all of this running back attrition, you sort of feel bad for David Smith. Because I still think he would have had a hard time getting on the field. But he might have had more of a chance to do more in the spring game, and maybe even on into the fall, he would have had a few more opportunities. But I think David Smith probably made the right call. Daniel Brooks is fast enough, and I kind of feel bad for him because he's barely gotten into games, at all. And everybody talks about how fast he is. He's just not very big. So, but maybe in this offense,
maybe it doesn't need to be very big. If they find a way, to get him in space a little bit. Now, I think Alex Ross might be a guy who can thrive more than he has to this point in this offense because of some of the different things that Lincoln Riley likes to do in that spread. But another thing, and this is something else we're going to be writing about not only this week but on into next week, is the quarterback situation. And I know we talked about it, every time we sit here and talk football.
Yeah,
but
it's the big thing.
It's the thing.
Maybe someday we'll have to have a podcast where we just stay up front, no quarterbacks.
No.
I bet nobody would listen to that one.
Yeah,
though.
Probably not. But you have, 4 guys: Trevor Knight, Cody Thomas, Justice Hansen, and that Baker Mayfield guy.
Yeah,
vying for the quarterback spot. Looking ahead a little bit into the spring game. In a week and a half, 2 weeks, I guess. How do you think they divide the time in the spring game? You think it's going to be 4 guys virtually equal? You think it's going to be 3 guys getting the majority of the reps?
Yeah.
Something different?
Well, that's going to be the thing that I think is going to be so interesting to watch. At this point, I asked Bob Stoops last week how he was splitting up his running backs carries or not running backs. God, I'm sorry, I'm still thinking about Keith Ford. How he was splitting up the quarterback reps, and he didn't really want to answer that, but he pretty much said they're all getting equal reps. Well, who knows if that's true or not, but I can only imagine that Mayfield and Knight are the 2 top candidates. And so maybe it wouldn't surprise me all that much if those 2 were the 2 at the top of the pecking order in the spring game, the first 2 that go out. And then from there, maybe Cody Thomas, and then as much as I like Justice Hansen and think that he's really capable of doing some big things, I also think that he's kind of clearly the 4th guy.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that. I think that's probably going to be the case that Trevor Knight and Baker Mayfield get the majority of the reps with Cody Thomas maybe being close but not quite to that level, and then Justice Hansen being a little bit farther behind. But as I say every time we talk about quarterbacks, I still think Cody Thomas is capable of being the guy when it's all said and done.
Well, I do too. I mean, he's obviously talented enough, and he's we've said this a million times on this podcast, but I mean, we saw him play in that one high school game and saw sort of what his arm is what his arm is capable of, and so there's really no doubt that he's he's more than capable of competing at this level, of thriving at this level even, but I definitely think that last season did not go well, and it sort of makes you wonder if even if he's got the physical tools, is he capable of playing at this level or incapable of playing at this level for other reasons that we don't know about. He's a sharp guy. Every time he comes into the interview room, he's really impressive. So I don't know what that would be. Maybe not focusing on baseball or not even having baseball at all will help. That could certainly have played a role as well.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Jason, we talked about a couple of the stories we're working on for this week. The running back situation, the quarterbacks a little bit, nothing specific, but talk about some of the other stuff we're planning on right this week.
Well, I think we've talked about doing something on Eric Stryker on the field. We've obviously written a whole lot about Eric Stryker lately off the field, but I think we need to get back to talking about him on the field. He's one of the best players coming back. He's certainly the defensive leader, I think, right there along with Sanchez and Tapper. But to me, Stryker's sort of the main defensive leader. He was a captain last year, and he considered leaving early for the NFL draft. And I don't know if that would have really worked out for him. I think he probably made the right call coming back. But we'll see what he can do this year. Last year they tried to put him in pass coverage more. So his quarterback sack numbers weren't quite as up as they were the year before. I don't really know how they're going to work with Stryker, because Mike Stoops said last week that they're working some back in a 4-man front, so they're going to try to be more multiple. If they're primarily in a 4-man front, how does that affect Eric Stryker? Because he seems like he's perfect to be that 3-4 outside linebacker who blitzes.
Yeah.
So maybe that'll help with his versatility and make him a better NFL prospect. I don't know, but to me, he's going to be a real interesting guy to watch moving forward.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Well, Jason, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you all so much for joining us, and you can check us out every day at newsok.com and every morning in the Oklahoman for the best OU coverage anywhere.